Kutaki no Ha, episode 21, Thursday, June 15th, 2006. Welcome to Kutaki no Ha, the podcast dedicated to the Bujinkan martial arts of Masaaki Hatsumi Soke and to the spirit of cooperation and friendship in the Bujinkan community. I'm Shawn, your host for the podcast. Well, it's June 15th already, and it's been over a month now since I released episode 20 of the Kutaki no Ha podcast. That was the video episode that had taken me so long to get out. I really appreciate all the positive feedback that I had on that. Actually got more positive feedback than I thought I was going to get because I had taken so long to do it, and I wasn't really sure how it would be taken and how the quality was. But thanks to everyone who mentioned or sent me in positive feedback on that. Getting back to our regular audio format this episode, we have a few things to talk about. One of them is a new thing on the Kutaki website we have, the Bujin Wiki, which is located in a link on the left side under the main menu. If you're registered as a user on the Kutaki website, you can go in there and click on the Bujin Wiki link, and it will take you to a wiki module that we've tested and installed on the website. I want to thank Alex Mihan from Ireland for all the help that he did with helping me test the wiki and kind of get it going. There's not a lot of content on the wiki yet, but hopefully with the help of Shiroshikai Forum members, we will get that kind of fleshed out and get a number of topics covered in there. The way we had decided to set it up was to give Shiroshikai Forum members write access so they can actually write pages in there, and then hopefully the wiki will become like a library of information put together by Bujinkan instructors, Bujinkan Shiroshi, who are sharing their knowledge and information with us. There are a number of differing opinions about how much information should actually be put out on the internet and this kind of thing, but hopefully the wiki will serve as kind of like a generic knowledge base which everyone can use. And so you probably won't find the top secret stuff in there, but you'll find some general information that hopefully will be helpful. The Bujin Wiki is one of two kind of major projects, modules that I've been working on lately to kind of spice up the site a bit, and the next one will hopefully be unveiled in the next kind of month or two as I have time to tweak it and test it. And what it is exactly for now is going to remain a secret, so keep your eyes open, and hopefully you'll like it when it's finally unveiled. Regarding discussions on the site recently, one kind of major thing that came up recently was the discussion of Stephen Hayes of the US, and his kind of relationship with the Bujinkan and what's happened with that recently. Mr. Hayes was quite influential in bringing the knowledge of the Bujinkan or ninjutsu, as it was more commonly known then at the time, to the US, and a number of people in the U.S. have kind of traced their heritage back to Stephen Hayes, or can trace how they found out about the Bujinkan back to Stephen Hayes. I myself first found out about the Bujinkan through an article in Black Belt magazine in 1984. It had Stephen Hayes, in his black ninja gear with hand claws taking out some guy in the front of the magazine. And I had just started studying karate at the time, and I took one look at that, and I thought, wow, this looks really cool, and got reading the article and got interested in ninjutsu, and it was kind of through Hayes that I myself found out about the Bujinkan originally as well. There was some discussion on Kutaki recently about what kind of happened with regard to Hayes' Judan nameplate at the Hombu Dojo back in May. and I think some people were kind of making a bigger deal about it than it really was, and acting as if, Hatsumi Sensei had given this big, huge kind of expulsion order. But I don't think it really happened that way. And George Ohashi was there at the time, and after the day after this actually happened, he sent out a mail to his Japanese mailing list explaining what happened, and just to kind of maybe correct any rumors that might be floating around out there, I thought I would read a short piece of that email which described actually what happened at the Hombu at the time, so that people kind of get the right story about it. So I'll translate the email here as I read it, but here's what he had to say about the situation. Today at training, I had the following conversation with Soke. This is basically a personal conversation between myself and Soke, but I think it is necessary for a large number of people to know about it, so I'm writing it here on this list. Soke, what Hayes is teaching is Toshindo. It's not Budo Taijutsu. He's not a Bujinkan member. He hasn't paid his fees in over 10 years. Ohashi, but his nameplate is up on the Judan board. Soke, oh, is it? Well, you can take it down then. Because that was said to me, a few minutes after this conversation, I went over and took the nameplate off the board. A number of Shihan at the dojo were there and saw this happen. The nameplate was given to one of the Japanese Shihan to dispose of. And there were a number of comments that Ohashi-san made following this, which kind of gave his interpretation of the events, but I won't quote all of those here because it was given on his mailing list. So the story of how it happened itself was quite a short kind of plain event with no big fanfare or fireworks or big cymbals clanging or anything like that. It was just a simple conversation and a simple action in which that event took place. So I just wanted to clarify that here so people don't kind of overblow the situation and make it out for more than what it actually was. Mr. Hayes obviously has been following his own kind of path for some time, and that's been his choice, and we all have choices that we make for our own training and with regard to our relationships with our teachers and things like this. So in the end, it's just a matter of who you want to train with and that kind of thing, and we all just keep going and do our best on the path that we've chosen. Getting on to less political and therefore more important things, we're going to be starting with a new regular segment of the podcast with this episode, and that segment is going to be a section on training tips and drills and things like this, which will be presented by Rob Renner. Rob is originally from Florida and has been training in the Bujinkan for quite a while, and he has been living in Japan for the last couple of years, and so we're going to be having him regularly on the podcast giving his thoughts and tips on training. So without any further ado, here is Rob.
Hello, this is Rob Renner, and welcome to the training segment of the Kutaki no Ha podcast. In the training segments, we're going to be bringing you some drills, some tips, some ideas to keep in mind that are going to greatly improve the efficiency of your training of Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu. Since Hatsumi Sensei is the epitome of Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu, all our drills and techniques are going to be designed to give us movement comparable to his. Hatsumi Sensei has a particular skill set that we can all attain. That is not to say that we're going to move exactly the way he is, because he is a unique individual with a unique mind and a unique body. But we definitely can attain his skill set. That being said, and this is the first training segment, we're going to talk about the very first part of performing any technique in the Bujinkan, and that is primary distance. Primary distance. This is the distance at which your attacker feels that he's going to be able to reach you with his attack, but in reality he cannot. In his video on Mudodori, Hatsumi Sensei describes this primary distance like this. He says to place your head in a position that's easy to cut while moving your feet to a position that's difficult to cut. Although this sounds like a contradiction, What he's actually explaining is being far enough away that your attacker feels he can just reach you with the edge of his weapon, whether that's a fist, a kick, a knife, or sword, or a bow, what have you. But your feet, and therefore the rest of your body, are actually just out of range, so that as he begins his attack and you slightly move back and down, you will avoid the edge of his weapon. Now, how do we find this range? How do we determine it when so many people have so many different shaped bodies and length of arms? Well, it's really a simple tool. With your training partner, I want you to have him stand with his arms stretched out to the side. I want you to notice the hollow of his throat. That is the area below his Adam's apple. Inside his body, behind this hollow of his throat, we'll call it the focal point, his shoulder girdle attaches to his spine. At this point, if you measure out all the way to his fingertips with his arms outstretched, you will have your opponent's range. He cannot extend this range any more than that, because the bone structure is what it is. Now, if you walk over and place your own focal point, that is the hollow of your throat, just lightly against his fingertips, you will find your primary distance. You must maintain this distance or more to avoid being hit with your attacker's strike. So, just to reiterate, your opponent or your partner is standing with his arms outstretched to the side, and you are standing facing with his fingertips against the hollow of your throat, or your focal point. We're going to call this the focal point because I want you to keep this point in mind when you're performing your techniques. Now, have your partner lower his arm and step back 1/2 step so that he's facing you. You're both squared off facing each other. In order for him to make contact with you, he's going to have to step forward again and actually bend over slightly at the waist to actually touch you with his fingertip. This is primary distance. If you maintain the distance between his focal point and your focal point, he won't be able to touch you. So we're going to do a little drill here, and we're going to have your opponent actually step forward and grab your lapel. As he goes to step forward and grab your lapel, I want you to place one of your feet a foot's length behind the other, so that as he goes forward, you leave your head in place, but move your foot back. So when he goes to grab you, you're going to take your hips and sink down and back, coiling yourself over your feet, so that you're still balanced. Your head is over your shoulders are over your hips, and your hips are over your heels. You're still squared off facing your opponent, but as he steps forward and reaching for you, he won't actually be able to grab your lapel. Your head is close enough that he feels that you should still be in range, but in reality you are not. This is the crucial element of primary distance. Hatsumi Sensei describes it like this. You take a piece of paper and write life on one side and death on the other. This is the distance by which your opponent should miss you. It's a scary place to be when someone has a sword in their hand or a knife, or they're big and hulking and fast and strong and throwing a punch at you. But this is the practice of Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu. So, to reiterate, the range is from your opponent's focal point out to the maximum length of the reach of his weapon. If he has a knife in his hand, it's going to be farther than his fist. If he's got a sword in his hand, it's going to be farther yet, and of course, a 6-foot bow, it's going to increase more and more, spear, yari, so on and so forth. Also keep in mind that for a kick, it's going to be approximately an extra hand's distance past his fist. So keep that in mind. The focal point out to the maximum range, you want to be the distance of a piece of paper past that. Now, before we finish this, I want to talk about one more crucial piece of primary distance, and that is when to move. Many times I hear the admonition that you wait as long as possible to move and move as slow as possible. But that actually won't work, because if the attack is already commenced and coming at you, and you wait to move till the attack is already coming, it's too late. At real fight speed, it's too late. And Hatsumi Sensei does not do that. Hatsumi Sensei actually moves slightly ahead of his attacker. In other words, he draws the attack. He doesn't move his head out of the way. He keeps his head as a target. Once again, the primary distance, so that his attacker feels like he can reach him. But he's already moving. So that no matter how fast his attacker moves, Hatsumi Sensei begins moving first and moves slower. he can move very slow because he's already moving. So keep that in mind. You've got your primary distance, but you must already be moving. And another little side piece is in discovering the primary distance, the range of your opponent. After you practice with just a couple of people, you'll find that it's easy to find this primary distance all the time. It's not something you have to discover every single time with each new person. It's kind of like climbing up and down stairs. You mastered that skill as a child, and now, no matter how far apart the stairs are, 12 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, whatever, you automatically adjust the length of your stride to go up and down the stairs. You don't have to stop, gauge, practice going up and down a step or two. You just automatically do it. And you will find that finding your primary distance with your opponent will end up being the same way. So, that's all for today's training segment. I thank you. If you have any questions, which I hope that you will, please feel free to email me. My name is Rob Renner again. My email is mindwrench, mindwrench @gmail.com. That's googlemail.com. Mindwrench@gmail. Or, of course, you can PM me on the Kutaki website. If you have any training suggestions or tips or things that you notice in your training that you think are important to share, let me know those as well. And if you happen to be coming to Tokyo to train with Hatsumi Sensei, I invite anyone and everyone to come train with me. If you want to know times and locations, once again, just contact me at my email. Thanks, and have some great training.
This is Podgy from Podgy's Tokyo Talk, and you are listening to Kutaki no Ha, the podcast all about Kutaki, I think. And it's ha, but that's not a funny ha-ha, that's a wave ha-ha. The wave of Kutaki. Listen, if you're a martial artist and you're interested. If you're not interested and you're not a martial artist, don't listen to it. Listen to me, Podgy, Tokyo Talk. Bye.
Look forward to having Rob back with more training perspectives in future episodes. For those who don't remember, Rob was also interviewed on Kutaki no Ha episode 13. So if you want to get some more perspectives from Rob right now, all you have to do is go back and listen to episode 13 to get those. But for now, that's it, and we'll hear more from Rob hopefully next episode. We're going to take a break now for some music, and this music is from a band called Chachi on Acid, and the song name is Coffee is Good Food. Again, this is from the PodSafe Music Network, which you can find at music.podshow.com. So here it is, Coffee is Good Food. And there's just a little bit of revenge to those people who were complaining that all I do is play electronica. And this is the kind of music that you listen to when you are drinking too much coffee. Like my good friend Mike Lunam, who has his podcast called Podgy in Japan, Podgy's Tokyo Talk, which you can find linked from the Kutaki podcast, the Kutaki no Ha podcast, which is at www.kutaki.org/podblog, and Podgy's Tokyo Talk is linked from there. So give him a listen as well, and give him a vote as well. Speaking of voting, yes, you have to vote for this podcast if you vote for Podgy. If you vote for Podgy, you have to vote for Kutaki. That's the deal that we have worked out. So head on over to podcastalley.com and give us a vote, please. We really appreciate the votes. And there is a link to the voting page on the pod blog for each episode. You can click there and head over to Podcast Alley to cast your vote. Now that I've given the big vote plea, I'm going to wrap up this episode and get it uploaded and online for all you Kutaki junkies to listen to. Have a good day and see you again, hopefully in a couple of weeks, or maybe 3 weeks, or maybe a month. But it won't be too long. So have a good one and talk to you again soon.